The alien ships filled the sky above Earth like dark clouds before a storm. 50,000 warships, each one larger than the biggest city on the planet, surrounded the solar system in a net of metal and weapons. They had arrived 3 days ago without warning, blocking out the stars and casting shadows across entire continents. Captain Jiho Park stood on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn, his hands gripped tight behind his back as he watched the massive alien flagship through the view screen. The ship was called the Eternal Dominion, and it hung above Earth like a sword waiting to fall. Jiho had fought in the Mars colony wars 5 years ago, had seen good soldiers die in the red dust, but he had never seen anything like this. The enemy then had been human rebels. These aliens were something else entirely. "Sir, the countdown shows 60 hours remaining," said Lieutenant Yuna Han from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jiho could hear the fear underneath. Everyone was afraid now. How could they not be? The aliens called themselves the Galactic Conquered. 12 different species, all united under one banner, all demanding the same thing from humanity: kneel or die. Ambassador Minho Choi was aboard the Eternal Dominion right now, trying to negotiate, trying to find some way out of this nightmare. But Jiho knew the truth. He had read the reports. The Conquered did not negotiate. They conquered. Down on Earth, the cities were in chaos. Half the governments wanted to surrender immediately, to save their people from destruction. The other half wanted to fight, even though everyone knew it was hopeless. How do you fight 50,000 ships when humanity barely had 300 combat-ready vessels? How do you win against technology that made Earth's best weapons look like children's toys? Admiral Salman Lee's face appeared on the screen, transmitted from the command station on the moon. She looked tired, older than her 50 years. "Captain Park, what's the status of the Prometheus project?" Jiho glanced at Dr. Hana Kim, who stood near the science station. Hana was young, barely 30, but she was the smartest person Jiho had ever met. She had spent the last 2 years working on humanity's secret weapon, hidden in laboratories deep under the moon's surface. "The drive is functional," Hana said quietly. "But we haven't tested it at full power. If we activate it, there's no guarantee it won't tear the ship apart." "We may not have a choice," Admiral Soman said. Her eyes were hard, the eyes of someone who had already made impossible decisions. "Stand by for orders." The screen went dark. Jiho looked out at the stars again, at the alien ships that surrounded his home. Somewhere out there, Ambassador Minho was fighting a different kind of battle, one with words instead of weapons. Jiho hoped he would succeed. He hoped humanity would find a peaceful way through this, but he did not believe it would happen. Hours passed slowly. Reports came in from Earth's surface. Riots in some cities, prayer vigils in others. The United Nations building had been evacuated after a bomb threat. Russia and China had moved their fleets to defensive positions, preparing for the worst. America had activated its entire nuclear arsenal, though everyone knew nukes would be useless against shields that could stop a direct hit from a fusion bomb. "Incoming transmission from the Eternal Dominion," Yuna announced suddenly. "It's the ambassador." Minho's face filled the screen. He looked exhausted, his suit wrinkled, his eyes red. "Captain Park, I need you to record this message and send it to Admiral Lee immediately." His voice was hollow, defeated. "The negotiations have failed." Jiho felt his stomach drop. "What happened?" "The Concord leader, High Archon Velthar, Minho shook his head. "He called us primitive warmongers. He said humanity is too violent, too dangerous to be allowed independence. He showed me evidence of our crimes, the Mars colony wars, the genetic experiments in the Asian Union laboratories, the AI research that violates their laws. He said we're like children playing with fire and the Conquered must protect the galaxy from us." "What did you tell him?" Jiho asked. "I told him humanity has the right to govern itself. I told him we've made mistakes, but we're learning, growing." Minho's hands were shaking. "He laughed at me, Captain. He said we have 72 hours to accept vassalage. After that, they will demonstrate their power by destroying our orbital stations and 3 major cities. They will keep destroying cities until we surrender." The bridge went silent. Jiho heard someone behind him whisper a prayer. Yuna's face had gone pale. Even Hana, who always seemed so calm and logical, looked shocked. "They can't," Yuna said. That's billions of people. "They can and they will," Minho said. "Unless we surrender." Velthar gave me a document to bring back. It outlines the terms. Humanity will disarm completely. Earth's governments will be dissolved. We will be ruled by a conquered governor. Our population will be limited to 2 billion. The rest His voice broke. The rest will be relocated to colony worlds as labor. Slavery. They were talking about slavery. What does Admiral Lee say? Jiho asked. I don't know yet. I'm being escorted back to the shuttle now. Captain Park. I've spent my whole life believing in diplomacy, in peace, in finding common ground. Minho looked directly at the camera, and Jiho saw something new in his eyes. Not fear, anger. But these creatures, they don't want peace. They want control. They want us to kneel. The transmission ended. Jiho stood in the silence that followed, his mind racing. 72 hours. 3 days before the aliens would start killing billions of people. 3 days to decide the future of the human race. Sir, Yuna said softly. What do we do? Before Jiho could answer, every screen on the bridge lit up at once. Admiral Soman's face appeared, but this time she was broadcasting to every ship, every station, every military installation in the solar system. Her message was also being sent to the Eternal Dominion, to the 50,000 alien ships, to the entire Galactic Concord. This is Admiral Soman Lee, Supreme Commander of Earth's Unified Defense Fleet, speaking on behalf of humanity. Her voice was clear and strong. The Galactic Concord has given us an ultimatum. Surrender our freedom or face destruction. They believe we will choose survival over dignity. They believe fear will make us weak. She paused and Jiho saw her jaw tighten. They are wrong. Humanity has faced extinction before. We have fought wars, survived plagues, overcome disasters that would have destroyed lesser species. We have clawed our way up from caves to reach the stars. And we did not come this far. We did not sacrifice so much. To kneel before tyrants. Jiho felt something stir in his chest. Pride. Hope. Something he thought he had lost. To the Galactic Concord, I say this. Humanity's answer is no. We will not surrender. We will not be slaves. If you want our world, you will have to take it from us, and we will make you pay for every inch. Admiral Samin leaned forward, her eyes burning with defiance. Humanity kneels to no one. The transmission ended. For a moment, the bridge was completely silent. Then Yuna started clapping and others joined her, and suddenly everyone was cheering, shouting, crying. They knew what was coming. They knew most of them would probably die. But they would die free. Jiho looked at Hana. How long until the Prometheus drive is ready? 12 hours, she said. Maybe less. Make it less, Jiho said. We're going to war. The first alien missiles hit Earth's orbital defense platforms exactly 72 hours after the ultimatum was delivered. Captain Jiho Park watched from the bridge of the Defiant Dawn as bright flashes lit up the space around the planet, each one marking the death of a station and everyone aboard. Station 7 is gone, Lieutenant Yuna reported, her voice tight. Station 3 is reporting hull breaches. Station 12? She stopped, swallowing hard. Station 12 just exploded. Jiho forced himself to stay calm even as rage burned in his chest. Those stations held thousands of people. Engineers, scientists, soldiers. Gone in seconds. The Concord was making good on their threat, showing humanity what happened to those who refused to kneel. All ships maintain position, he ordered into the comm. Do not engage until Admiral Lee gives the signal. Around the moon, hidden in craters and behind artificial debris fields, 12 other ships waited alongside the Defiant Dawn. They were humanity's secret weapon, built in hidden shipyards over the past 2 years. Experimental vessels with new drives, new weapons, new shields. They were untested. They might not even work. But they were all humanity had. Down on Earth, alarms were screaming in every major city. Debris from the destroyed stations was beginning to enter the atmosphere, burning streaks of light across the sky. General Yunji Shin was coordinating the evacuation of coastal cities, preparing for the worst. But where could 8 billion people go? Where could they hide from an enemy that controlled the entire solar system? Sir, I'm picking up movement from the Concord fleet, said Engineer Do-hyun Kang from his station. Looks like 300 ships breaking formation heading for Earth. 300. Against humanity's 300 ships scattered across the solar system, it seemed almost fair. But Jiho knew better. Each Concord warship was worth 10 human vessels. Their shields were stronger, their weapons more powerful, their systems more advanced. This was not a battle. This was an execution. All ships, this is Admiral Lee, the Koam crackled to life. Launch on my mark. Show these aliens what humans do when they're pushed into a corner. Show them we fight. The moon's surface erupted as hidden launch bays opened. The Defiant Dawn shot forward, its new Prometheus drive humming with barely controlled power. Behind it came the other experimental ships. The Morning Star, the Last Hope, the Vengeful Sun. Their names were prayers and promises. The conquered ships opened fire immediately. Blue beams of energy lanced through space, each one powerful enough to cut a human destroyer in half. But the experimental ships were faster than the aliens expected. They twisted and turned, using maneuvers that would have torn apart ordinary vessels. The new inertial dampeners that Dr. Hana Kim had designed kept the crews alive, even as their ships pulled impossible turns. "Target the cruiser on the left," Jiho ordered.
"All forward batteries, fire!"
The Defiant Dawn's weapons blazed. Missiles streaked through space, followed by railgun rounds moving at a fraction of light speed. The conquered cruiser's shields flared bright blue, absorbing the impact. But Jiho smiled. They had heard it. The shields had flickered for just a moment. "Do-hyun, redirect all auxiliary power to the forward cannons," he said. "Sir, that will leave us exposed," Do-hyun warned. "Do it." The ship shuddered as power flowed to the weapons. The next volley hit the cruiser in the same spot, and this time the shields failed. Metal exploded outward as the railgun rounds punched through the hull. Atmosphere vented into space in a glittering cloud of frozen air. "First blood," Yuna whispered. But there was no time to celebrate. More conquered ships were closing in, and humanity's fleet was already taking losses. The destroyer Righteous Fury took a direct hit and broke apart, its crew of 200 dying instantly. The frigate Dauntless lost its engines and drifted helplessly into the field of fire. "Ghost Squadron, you are clear to engage," Admiral Lee's voice commanded. From Earth's atmosphere, fighter craft burst upward like angry wasps. Ghost Squadron, led by Lieutenant Yuna's former wingmate, consisted of 50 of humanity's best pilots in the newest fighter models. They were small and fast and carried experimental weapons that Dr. Hana had spent months developing. The fighters swarmed around a conquered heavy cruiser, too fast for its large guns to track. They fired missiles that split apart at the last second, becoming clusters of smaller warheads that overwhelmed the point defense systems. Explosions bloomed across the cruisers. "Oh, that's for Station 7, one of the," pilot said over the comm before his fighter, was hit by return fire and disappeared in a ball of flame. Jiho watched the battle unfold across multiple screens. It was chaos. Ships exploded and died on both sides, but humanity was losing more. For every Concorde vessel destroyed, 3 human ships were lost. The math was simple and brutal. At this rate, Earth's defense fleet would be gone in hours. "Captain, I have an idea," Hana said suddenly. She had been analyzing the sensor data, her fingers flying across her console. "Look at this. Every time we hit their shields in the same spot repeatedly, they take longer to recharge. Their technology is more advanced, but it's also more complex. It has weaknesses." "What kind of weaknesses?" "Their shield generators operate on a rotating frequency. If we can match that frequency, we can slip projectiles through without triggering the shields at all." Hana pulled up a diagram. "But we need to coordinate our fire. Multiple ships hitting the same target at the exact same moment." Jiho immediately understood. "It's a gamble. If we focus fire on one ship, the others will tear us apart." "We're being torn apart anyway," Hana said quietly. She was right. Jiho opened the command channel. "All ships, this is Captain Park. We're changing tactics. Form up on the Defiant Dawn. We're going hunting." 5 of the experimental ships broke away from the main battle and joined the Defiant Dawn. Together they accelerated toward a conquered battlecruiser that was systematically destroying Earth's orbital solar arrays. The battlecruiser's shields glowed as it absorbed fire from a dozen human frigates. "Hana, transmit the shield frequency to all ships," Jiho ordered. "Weapons, prepare for synchronized strike." The 6 human ships spread out surrounding the battlecruiser. Hana counted down over the comm. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fire! 6 ships fired as one. Missiles and railgun rounds hit the battlecruiser from multiple angles at precisely the same instant. For a split second, nothing happened. Then the shields collapsed completely, overloaded by the simultaneous impacts. The weapons punched through the unprotected hull, and secondary explosions rippled across the massive ship. The battlecruiser listed to one side, atmosphere and debris streaming from 100 breaches. "It was dying. It worked," Do-hyun shouted. Again, Jiho said, "Find another target." Word spread through the human fleet. Other ships began coordinating their attacks, focusing fire, exploiting the weakness Hana had discovered. More Concord vessels took damage and a few actually retreated, pulling back to regroup. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, High Archon Velthar watched the battle with growing disbelief. These primitive humans were actually fighting back. More than that, they were adapting, learning, finding weaknesses in conquered technology that had been considered invincible for centuries. Impossible, he said. They should be fleeing in terror. They should be begging for mercy. His second-in-command, a reptilian creature from the Sorrow species, hissed softly. The humans are not like the others we have conquered, Archon. They do not think like civilized species. They are chaotic. Then we will teach them the price of chaos, Velthar said. He turned to his weapons officer. Activate the quantum disruptors. I want that experimental ship destroyed, the one their captain commands. But before the order could be carried out, every screen on the Eternal Dominion went dark. Emergency lights flickered on. Alarms began to wail. What is happening? Velthar roared. Our communications are being jammed, the tactical officer reported. Some kind of quantum disruption field. It's affecting all ships within the inner solar system. On the defiant dawn, Dr. Hana smiled as her equipment hummed with power. The Prometheus project was more than just a new drive system. It was a complete suite of technologies that humanity had developed in secret, and one of those technologies was a quantum jammer that could disrupt the sophisticated communication systems the Concord relied on. They're blind, she said to Jiho. They can't coordinate their attacks anymore. Without communication, the Concord fleet fell into disarray. Ships that had fought with perfect coordination now operated independently, making mistakes, overlapping fire, sometimes even hitting their own vessels by accident. The human fleet pressed their advantage. More coordinated strikes, more shields breached, more conquered ships damaged or destroyed. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the battle ended. The Concord fleet retreated, pulling back beyond the moon's orbit. They had lost 30 ships. Humanity had lost twice that many, but they had done the impossible. They had made the aliens bleed. Damage report, Jiho said, slumping back in his chair. Hull breaches on deck 7 and 12, Doyun reported. Shield generators at 40%. We're still flight capable, but we took a beating. Casualties? 17 dead, 33 wounded. Jiho closed his eyes. 17 good people gone, but thousands more were still alive because they had fought back. The Void Hammer was moving into position. Captain Jiho Park could see it through the long-range sensors, a massive weapon platform being towed by 6 Concord heavy cruisers. Intelligence reports said it could crack a planet in half with a single shot. Earth had 48 hours before it fired. In the command center on the moon, every military leader in the solar system was arguing about what to do. Some wanted to evacuate as many people as possible. Others wanted to surrender and hope the Concord would show mercy. A few wanted to launch every nuclear weapon at the Void Hammer and pray it would be enough. None of that will work, Jiho said, his voice cutting through the noise. We can't evacuate 8 billion people in 2 days. The Concord has already shown they don't care about mercy, and nukes won't scratch that weapon platform's shields. Then what do you suggest, Captain? Admiral Soman Lee asked. She looked exhausted, barely holding herself together. We take the fight to them, Jiho said. We hit the Eternal Dominion directly. The room went silent. Several officers stared at him like he had lost his mind. That's suicide, General Unji Shin said flatly. The flagship is protected by hundreds of warships. We'd be destroyed before we got within weapons range. Not if we use the Prometheus drive, Dr. Hana Kim said quietly. She had been standing in the corner, listening. Now everyone turned to look at her. The drive can fold space. We can jump directly inside their defensive perimeter. Can it? Admiral Soman asked. The drive has never been tested at full power. Hana hesitated. There's a 40% chance the ship will be torn apart during the jump. The spatial mathematics are complicated, but if it works, we'd appear right next to the Eternal Dominion, close enough to board. Board? General Unji laughed, but it was a bitter sound. You want to board an alien flagship? With what, a few hundred Marines? With the best soldiers we have, Commander Solabay said, stepping forward. She was in charge of Earth's Special Operations Marines, the ones trained for impossible missions. If we can get inside, we can sabotage the ship. Maybe even turn the Void Hammer against the Conquered fleet. It's insane, someone muttered. It's humanity's only chance. Jiho said. If we do nothing, Earth dies. If we run, we die slowly on some alien world as slaves. This way, at least we go down fighting. Admiral Summon looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. Then she nodded slowly. How long do you need to prepare? 24 hours, Hana said. You have 12, Admiral Somin said. After that, every hour the Void Hammer gets closer to firing position. The meeting ended. Jiho and his crew rushed back to the Defiant Dawn. The ship was still damaged from the previous battle, but Do-hyun and his engineers worked miracles, patching holes and rerouting systems. They didn't have time to fix everything, just enough to keep the ship flying. Dr. Hana worked on the Prometheus drive, calibrating the quantum field generators and checking the math 100 times. She barely slept, surviving on coffee and determination. When Jiho came to check on her, he found her staring at a screen covered in equations. Will it work? He asked. I don't know, she admitted. In theory, yes. But we're trying to punch a hole through reality itself. There are so many variables, so many things that could go wrong. But it might work. It might, Hana said. She turned to look at him and Jiho saw the fear in her eyes. I'm sending good people to their deaths, aren't I? We're all going to die anyway, Jiho said gently. At least this way we die trying to save our home. That's worth something. While Hana worked on the drive, Commander Sola trained her Marines. She had picked 200 of the best, volunteers who knew this was likely a one-way trip. They trained in zero-gravity combat, practiced breaching techniques, studied the limited intelligence they had on alien ship layouts. Remember, these aliens are bigger and stronger than us, Sola told her troops. They have better armor and weapons, but we have something they don't: experience fighting in close quarters. We're smaller, faster, and more adaptable. We use that advantage. One of her Marines, a young woman named Suji, raised her hand. Commander, what if we can't find the Void Hammer controls? What if the ship is too big? Then we improvise, Sola said. We destroy what we can, kill who we can, and make them regret ever coming to Earth. The Marines cheered. They were scared. Sola could see it in their faces, but they were also ready. They had all lost someone in the previous battle. They all had something to fight for. Meanwhile, Ambassador Minho Choi was doing something no one expected. He was secretly contacting members of the Galactic Concord, reaching out to species that seemed less enthusiastic about the war. He found allies in unexpected places. The Kalari, a species of insectoid creatures who had been conquered 200 years ago. The Thoran, aquatic beings who had been forced into the Concord after their homeworld was threatened. We did not want this war, a Kalari representative told him through encrypted channels. But we have no choice. The Conquered rules through fear. Then help us, Minho said. Not with weapons or ships. Just information. Tell us about the Eternal Dominion. Tell us how to hurt them. The Kalari hesitated, then sent him detailed schematics of the flagship. It was a treasure trove of intelligence, weak points in the hull, locations of critical systems, even the layout of the command bridge. Why are you helping us? Minho asked. Because you are doing what we were too afraid to do, the Kalari said. You are fighting back. If you somehow succeed, if you somehow survive, perhaps other species will find the courage to resist as well. The schematics were sent to Commander Sola immediately. She studied them with her officers, planning attack routes and identifying targets. The ship was enormous, more like a city in space than a vessel. But now they knew where to go. Lieutenant Yuna was preparing for her own mission. While the Defiant Dawn boarded the flagship, she would lead the remainder of Earth's fleet in a diversionary attack. They would draw the Concord's attention, make them think the main assault was coming from outside. It's a suicide run, one of her pilots said bluntly. Everything we do is a suicide run now, Yuna replied. But we're going to make it count. We're going to buy the boarding team time. She looked at her squadron, the pilots who had survived the first battle. There were only 30 fighters left from the original 50. I won't lie to you. Most of us won't come back. But Earth will remember us. They'll tell stories about the day humanity stood up to an empire and said no. The pilots were quiet for a moment. Then one of them smiled. Better to die in space than live as slaves, right? Right, Yuna said. The hours ticked away. Engineer Do-hyun made his final checks on the ship's systems. Everything was operating at barely acceptable levels, but it would have to do. He had said goodbye to his family on Earth, told his daughter he was proud of her, told his wife he loved her. Now he focused on his work because work was all that kept the fear away. Dr. Jun-Ho Lee, the AI specialist, activated NOVA, humanity's experimental artificial intelligence. NOVA was illegal by Concord law, one of the crimes they had accused humanity of committing. But NOVA was also brilliant, capable of hacking alien systems in ways humans couldn't. NOVA, we need you to infiltrate the Eternal Dominion's network when we board, Jun-Ho explained. Can you do that? Probability of success, 63%. NOVA replied in its calm, emotionless voice. However, I calculate a 94% probability that this mission will result in the destruction of this ship and all personnel aboard. We know, Jun-Ho said quietly. Then why proceed? Because some things are worth dying for. Nova was silent for a moment, processing. I understand. I will do my best to ensure the mission succeeds. Finally, the time came. The Defiant Dawn undocked from the lunar station, its damaged hull patched with temporary plating, its weapons loaded, its drives charged. 200 Marines were packed into the cargo bays, wearing heavy combat armor and carrying enough weapons to start a small war. Captain Ji-Ho sat in his command chair, looking at his crew. Hana at her science station, her hands steady on the controls. To-hyun at engineering, monitoring the fragile systems that kept them alive. Yuna had transferred back to her fighter, ready to lead the diversionary attack. All ships, this is Captain Park, he said over the fleet-wide channel. Today we do something impossible. Today we show the galaxy that humanity cannot be broken. No matter what happens, no matter how this ends, know that you are heroes. Every single one of you. He took a deep breath. Humanity doesn't kneel. Humanity fights. Across the solar system, the remaining ships of Earth's defense fleet began to move. Destroyers, frigates, fighters, civilian ships retrofitted with weapons. Everything humanity could throw into battle. They accelerated toward the conquered fleet, weapons hot, ready to die. Hana, initiate the jump sequence, Ji-Ho ordered. Hana's fingers danced across her console, charging quantum field generators. Calculating spatial coordinates. 30 seconds to jump. Reality began to twist around the Defiant Dawn. The stars outside the view screen stretched and blurred. Space itself seemed to bend inward. 20 seconds. The ship shuddered. Alarms began to sound. The hull groaned under impossible stresses. 10 seconds. Ji-Ho gripped his armrests. This was it. They would either appear inside the enemy fleet, or they would be scattered across 1,000 light years as atoms. 5 seconds. The universe turned inside out. The assault shuttles screamed through space toward the Eternal Dominion. Commander Sola Bay stood in the lead shuttle, magnetic boots locked to the floor as the small craft shook from weapons fire. Around her, 200 Marines checked their weapons one last time, each one knowing they might not survive the next hour. 30 seconds to impact, the pilot announced. Through the viewport, Sola could see the alien flagship growing larger. It was massive beyond comprehension, its hull covered in strange symbols and glowing lines of energy. Point defense turrets were already firing, trying to shoot down the approaching shuttles. 2 shuttles on the left flank exploded, taking 40 Marines with them. Brace for impact. The shuttle hit the Eternal Dominion's hull and immediately began cutting through with plasma torches. The metal was thick, designed to withstand weapon strikes, but the cutting equipment was designed by Dr. Hana specifically for this purpose. Sparks flew as the torches carved a large circle in the hull. Breach in 5 seconds, someone called out. Sola raised her weapon. Behind her, the Marines formed up in assault positions. The moment the hull gave way, they had to move fast. Surprise was their only advantage. The circular section of hull fell inward with a hiss of escaping atmosphere. Sola was the first through, dropping into a corridor that was 3 times too large for humans. The ceiling was 15 meters high. The hallway was wide enough to drive a truck through. Everything was built for beings much bigger than humans. Move, 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 Sola shouted. Marines poured through the breach behind her, spreading out and securing the area. The corridor was empty, but alarms were already sounding. The aliens knew they had been boarded. Team 1, you have the reactor, Sola ordered, consulting the map from the Kalari intelligence. Team 2, head for the Void Hammer controls. Team 3, you're with me. We're going to the bridge. The teams split up, running through corridors that felt like canyons. The architecture was alien and confusing, with ramps instead of stairs, doors that opened sideways instead of sliding up. Everything was slightly wrong, designed for beings with different bodies and different minds. Team 1, led by a sergeant named Kyung-ho, made it 300 meters before they encountered the first defenders. Alien soldiers came around a corner, 8 feet tall and covered in thick armor that made them look like walking tanks. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. "Contact," Kyung-ho shouted, diving behind a support pillar as blue energy beams turned the wall behind him into molten slag. His Marines returned fire. Human rifles cracked, sending armor-piercing rounds downrange. The bullets bounced off the alien armor at first, but concentrated fire found weak points. Joints, visors, exposed sections. One alien went down, then another, but more were coming. The corridor ahead was filling with defenders. "Grenades," Kyung-ho ordered. 3 Marines threw grenades down the hallway. The explosions were devastating in the enclosed space, throwing the aliens back. In the confusion, Kyung-ho's team pushed forward using the smoke and debris as cover. Meanwhile, Team 2 was having their own problems. They had reached a massive chamber that the schematics identified as a maintenance bay. It was filled with machinery and equipment, and unfortunately, it was also filled with alien workers. These aliens were different from the soldiers. Smaller, thinner, wearing simple clothing instead of armor. They scattered at the sight of the Marines, running in all directions. "Hold fire," the team leader, Lieutenant Daewon, ordered. "They're not armed." One of the aliens, a creature that looked like a combination of an insect and a bird, approached slowly with its hands raised. It made a series of clicking sounds that the Marines' translators couldn't understand at first. Then words formed. "We are slaves. Forced labor. Do not shoot." Daewon lowered his weapon slightly. "You're prisoners?" "Yes, taken from conquered worlds. Made to work." "The conquered?" The alien clicked its mandibles. "They are cruel masters." "Can you help us?" Daewon asked. "We're looking for the controls to a weapon platform." The insect-like alien consulted with several others, clicking and chirping. Then it turned back to Daewon. "We can show you. We want the Concord to fall. Follow." The aliens led them through a maze of corridors that didn't appear on any map. Hidden passages, maintenance tunnels, shortcuts that only the workers knew about. They moved faster this way, avoiding patrols and defense systems. Back on the Defiant Dawn, Captain Jiho was fighting his own battle. The moment they had appeared near the flagship, every Concord ship in the area had turned toward them. Energy beams and missiles filled space, all aimed at his ship. "Evasive maneuvers," Jiho ordered. The ship twisted and rolled, dodging fire that would have destroyed them instantly. But they couldn't dodge everything. The shields flared as impacts hit them, draining power rapidly. "Shields at 60%, Do-hyun reported from engineering. "We can't take much more of this." "We don't have to survive," Jiho said grimly. "We just have to buy the boarding team's time." Lieutenant Yuna's voice came over the comm. "Captain, this is Ghost Squadron. We're engaging the outer fleet. Should draw some heat off you." Through the view screen, Jiho could see the human fighters swarming like angry insects around the conquered cruisers. They were impossibly outnumbered, but they fought with desperate courage. Every few seconds, another fighter exploded, another pilot died. But they kept fighting. "Nova, can you hack into the Eternal Dominion systems yet?" Jiho asked. The AI's voice responded. "I am attempting to infiltrate their network through the breach point. The alien encryption is complex, but I am making progress." Inside the flagship, Commander Sola's team had fought their way halfway to the bridge. The corridors were filled with smoke and bodies now, both human and alien. They had lost 30 Marines already, but they kept pushing forward. Sola reloaded her weapon, her hands moving automatically from years of training. A massive alien soldier came around the corner, roaring a challenge. She fired 3 shots into its exposed throat, and it went down gurgling. "Commander, look at this," one of her Marines called out. They had entered what looked like a prison area. Cells lined both sides of a long hallway, and inside the cells were dozens of different alien species. All of them were thin and weak, clearly malnourished. More slaves, Sola realized. The conquered isn't just conquering species. They're enslaving them. One of the prisoners, a being that looked almost human except for its blue skin and extra set of arms, pressed against the energy barrier of its cell. "Free us, please, we were soldiers once." "We can fight," Sola made a decision. "Open the cells, Commander," one of her Marines questioned. "We need all the help we can get," Sola said. "And right now the enemy of our enemy is our friend." They opened the cells. The freed aliens were weak, but they were also angry. Some of them found weapons from fallen guards. Others just grabbed whatever they could use as clubs. They joined the human Marines, and suddenly Sola's force had doubled in size. Team 1 reached the reactor chamber and stopped in awe. The reactor was enormous, a sphere of contained energy that glowed with blue-white light. It was beautiful and terrible, the heart of the massive ship. "Rig it with explosives," Kyung-ho ordered. But before they could begin, Nova's voice came through their comms. "Wait, I have accessed the ship's network. I can overload the reactor remotely, but you need to get to a control terminal first." "Where?" Kyung-ho asked. 50 meters ahead to your right." They fought their way to the terminal. Engineer Do-yoon, who had insisted on joining this team, plugged in a data connector. Nova flowed into the alien computer system like water, spreading through their networks and taking control. "Fascinating," Nova commented. "Their technology is more advanced but also more rigid. They never anticipated someone hacking it from the inside." Team 2 reached the Voidhammer control center with help from the freed alien workers. The room was massive, filled with holographic displays and control stations. Alien technicians scrambled when the humans burst in, but Lieutenant Daewon's Marines cut them down quickly. "Nova, we're at the Voidhammer controls," Daewon reported. "Excellent. I am taking control of the weapon now." On the bridge of the Defiant Dawn, Jiho watched as the Voidhammer suddenly stopped moving. Its massive form, which had been slowly positioning itself to fire at Earth, went still in space. "Captain, I have control of the Voidhammer," Nova announced. "However, firing it requires manual authorization from this location. Someone must stay at the control center to execute the firing sequence." Lieutenant Daewon understood immediately. He looked at his team, at the young Marines who had followed him this far. "Everyone else fall back to the breach point. I'll handle this." "Sir, we can't leave you," one of the Marines protested. "You can and you will," Daewon said firmly. "Someone has to turn this weapon against the Concorde fleet. Might as well be me." He smiled sadly. "Tell my family. Tell them I helped save the world." The Marines reluctantly retreated, leaving Daewon alone at the control station. He could hear fighting in the corridors outside as more Concorde soldiers arrived. It wouldn't be long before they broke through. Commander Sola's team finally reached the bridge. The doors were massive and heavily armored, but they had brought enough explosives to breach a bunker. The charges detonated with a thunderous boom and the doors crumpled inward. The bridge was chaos. Alien officers shouted commands. For a moment, nothing happened. The entire conquered fleet hung motionless in space, waiting to see if their High Archon truly meant to surrender. Then one by one, the alien warships began powering down their weapons, but not all of them. "Commander, we have a problem." Nova's voice cut through the silence. 3 Concorde vessels are refusing to stand down. They are moving to attack the Defiant Dawn. Captain Jiho saw them on his sensors. 3 heavy cruisers breaking formation, weapons charging. They would rather die fighting than accept defeat at the hands of humans. "Lieutenant Daewon," Jiho said into his comm, his voice steady despite knowing what he was about to ask. "Can you target those 3 ships with the Voidhammer?" In the weapon control center, Daewon looked at the targeting display. His hands were shaking. The corridor outside was filled with smoke and the sounds of fighting as Concorde soldiers tried to break through the barricade he had built. He had minutes at most before they overwhelmed his position. "Yes, sir," Daewon said. "I can make the shot. But, Captain, the weapon's charging sequence will take 90 seconds. I won't be able to get out before it fires." Everyone listening on the comm channel understood what that meant. The Voidhammer would destroy the 3 cruisers and everything within a kilometer of them, including the control center where Daewon stood. "I know," Jiho said quietly. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," Daewon replied. He was smiling even though no one could see it. "This is what we signed up for, right? To protect Earth, to give humanity a future." He began inputting the firing sequence. "Tell my daughter I love her. Tell her that her dad was a hero." The Voidhammer came to life. Energy began gathering at its core, building to an impossible level. The 3 rebel Concorde cruisers realized what was happening and tried to flee, but they were too close. "Firing in 10 seconds, Daewon said. He could hear the door behind him beginning to buckle as the aliens broke through. 9 seconds. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Commander Sola forced High Archon Velthar to watch. "This is what happens when you push peaceful people too far. We become your nightmare." 8 seconds. The Concorde soldiers burst into the control center. Daewon turned to face them, his weapon raised. He fired until his rifle was empty. taking down 3 aliens before they reached him. Then they were on him, and he was fighting with his hands, his last moment spent in defiance. 7 seconds. On the defiant dawn, Engineer Do-hyun monitored the energy readings from the Void Hammer. The power output was staggering, enough to crack a planet. When directed at ships at such close range, the devastation would be absolute. 6 seconds. Lieutenant Yuna, still fighting in her damaged fighter, pulled her squadron back. They had lost 40 pilots out of 50. Only 10 fighters remained, limping back toward Earth. She looked at the Void Hammer and whispered a prayer for Daewon. 5 seconds. High Archon Velthar closed his eyes. He had ruled the Conquered for 50 years, had conquered a dozen species, had believed the galaxy belonged to those strong enough to take it. Now he was being lectured about peace by a primitive human while his own fleet fell apart around him. 4 seconds. Ambassador Minho Choi, monitoring the battle from the moon, felt tears running down his face. So many dead, so much sacrifice, but Earth was still there, still alive, still free. 3 seconds. Admiral Somin Lee stood in the command center, watching everything unfold. She had sent thousands to their deaths with her orders. She would carry that weight for the rest of her life. But they had won. Against impossible odds, humanity had won. 2 seconds. Dr. Hana Kim, exhausted and covered in sweat from keeping the Prometheus drive stable, allowed herself a small smile. Her technology had worked. They had jumped through space itself and lived. Science had saved humanity. 1 second. Captain Jiho Park stood on his bridge surrounded by his crew. They had all known this was a one-way mission. They had all been prepared to die. Instead, they had done the impossible. They had brought an empire to its knees. 0. The Void Hammer fired. The beam of energy that erupted from the weapon was unlike anything in human experience. It was focused destruction, the power of a star concentrated into a single point. It hit the first Conquered cruiser and simply erased it from existence. Atoms scattered. Metal vaporized. A ship that had been there one moment was gone the next. The beam continued, cutting through the second cruiser, then the third. The explosions were secondary effects. The death cries of massive reactors being torn apart. Light-filled space, bright enough to be seen from Earth's surface. And then the beam hit the control center where Lieutenant Daewon had made his last stand. The building ceased to exist, and Daewon with it. The Void Hammer powered down, its energy spent. Silence fell across the battlefield. "It's done," Commander Sola said softly. High Archon Velthar stared at the empty space where his 3 cruisers had been. You destroyed them. You forced us to," Sola replied. "We gave you every chance to withdraw peacefully. This is on you." Across the Conquered fleet, something unexpected happened. Ships began breaking formation, not to attack but to flee. The Kalari vessels were the first, turning away from Earth and activating their faster-than-light drives. Then the Thorin ships followed. Then others. The slave species that had been forced into the Concord were rebelling. They had seen humans fight an impossible battle and win. They had seen a primitive species bring the mighty High Archon to his knees. If humanity could resist, why couldn't they? Within hours, half the Concord fleet had deserted. The remaining ships were in chaos, officers arguing about whether to continue fighting, whether to rescue their captured leader, whether to retreat and regroup. "It's falling apart," Nova observed. "The Galactic Concord is fragmenting. Without the High Archon to hold them together through fear, the alliance is breaking." Ambassador Minho received the first contact from a deserting species less than an hour after the battle ended. It was the Kalari, the insect-like beings who had provided the intelligence about the Eternal Dominion. "Humanity has shown us what is possible," the Kalari representative said. "We wish to join you, not as subjects, not as vassals, but as equals. We wish to be free." Other species followed. The Thorin, the Vakari, the Nisene. Dozens of species that had been conquered by the Concord over the centuries, all reaching out to Earth, all asking for alliance, for friendship, for help in claiming their own freedom. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Commander Sola organized the withdrawal of the Marine teams. They had accomplished their mission, but the cost had been terrible. Of the 200 Marines who had boarded the ship, only 94 were still alive. They carried their wounded and their dead back to the assault shuttles, along with the freed alien prisoners who had fought beside them. "What about him?" one of the Marines asked, gesturing to High Archon Velthar. Sola looked at the defeated alien leader. He sat slumped in his throne, staring at nothing, his empire crumbling around him. "Take him," she said. "He'll stand trial for his crimes. Let the galaxy see that even tyrants are not above justice." The defiant Dawn limped back toward Earth, its hull scarred and burned, its systems barely functional. Captain Jiho stood on the bridge looking at his exhausted crew. They had done the impossible, but the victory felt hollow when he thought of all those who had not come back. "Captain, incoming transmission from Earth," Lieutenant Yuna said. She had docked her fighter in the defiant Dawn's bay, her squadron now reduced to just 9 ships. Admiral Soman Lee's face appeared on the screen. For the first time since the crisis began, she was smiling. "Captain Park, on behalf of humanity, thank you. You've saved us all." "It wasn't just us, Admiral," Jiho said. "It was every person who fought, every person who refused to surrender, and especially those who gave their lives. They're the real heroes. We'll honor them," Admiral Soman promised. "Every single one. Their names will be remembered for as long as humanity exists." The repairs to Earth took months. The orbital stations were rebuilt. The cities damaged by falling debris were reconstructed. The fleet was repaired and expanded, incorporating new technologies that humanity had learned from captured, conquered ships. Dr. Hana Kim became the head of a new research initiative, working with scientists from the freed alien species to develop even more advanced versions of the Prometheus drive. "We have friends now," she told her team, "and friends share knowledge." Commander Sola Bay was promoted to general and put in charge of training the new Earth Defense Force. She made sure every soldier learned the lessons of the battle: adaptability, creativity, and never underestimating the enemy. "We won because we thought differently," she taught them. "We won because we refused to fight their way." Ambassador Minho Choi spent his time negotiating the formation of what became known as the Free Worlds Coalition. It started with just a few species but grew rapidly as more and more worlds declared their independence from the collapsing conquered. "We're not building an empire," Minho insisted during the founding ceremonies. "We're building a partnership, a family of free peoples." 6 months after the battle, a memorial was built on the moon. It was a simple structure, a wall of black stone inscribed with names in every language humanity spoke. The names of everyone who had died defending Earth. Lieutenant Daewon. The 40 pilots from Ghost Squadron, the engineers who died on the orbital stations,